Hello, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Scenes, a podcast where we explore the intersection of art, culture, and big ideas. I'm your host, Sean Malone, creator of Out of Frame and the creative director for the Foundation for Economic Education. And with me is Paul Nelson, editor of Out of Frame Shorts and our social media director. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. You're going to appreciate this. For the first time ever, I've found a sport that I'm actually interested in.
There we go.
Yeah, it's a weird one though. Strongman.
Oh,
World's Strongest Man competition. There's actually a lot. There's World's Strongest Man, sort of like the pinnacle of that, but there's strongman competitions all over the place.
Right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger holds a annual strongman competition. They just call the Arnolds now.
The Arnolds.
Yeah, there's a bunch, and then there's like national ones. So most like the World's Strongest Man thing happens where like there's a bunch of national level versions, and then it's all kind of the best guys from, as you might imagine, all over the world. I got it. It's a weird thing because I got into it because of this guy Robert Oberst, who is one of the sort of perennial competitors of the World's Strongest Man, and I don't know if he's a world record holder. He's an American record holder of log lift currently, but he's got a great YouTube channel, and I was like really entertained by his YouTube channel, and that kind of like led me into this this History Channel show that he and a couple other guys did.
So the YouTube algorithm.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that terrifying YouTube algorithm serving me things that were entertaining to me. Just the worst, right? So it led me to this show called The Strongest Men in History, which was on the History Channel. And they're probably only ever going to have done one season of this show, which I don't know how it did ratings-wise. It came out last year. I don't know how it did in the ratings, except for what I know is that all of the guys who are current competitors, well, Eddie Hall isn't, but most of these guys are current competitors, and the History Channel show just murdered their like training schedule. So the guys don't want to do it anymore, even if they, History Channel wanted them to do it. But it was Robert Oberst and Eddie Hall, who was 2017 World's Strongest Man, and Nick Best, who I don't think has ever won a World's Strongest Man title, but who's just been there for years and years and years, and who is, in fact, super impressive because he's like 51 or 52 years old, and he's still doing 400-pound deadlifts and stuff, 400 kilogram deadlifts. I want to be clear.
Excuse me.
Yeah, excuse me.
It's international.
800-pound plus deadlifts.
That is nuts.
And Brian Shaw, who became my favorite person in the world about this, because Brian Shaw is he is 4 times World's Strongest Man. I want to say starting in 2011. I think it was 2011, and then he was 2015 and 2016 World's Strongest Man, and he's just like the nicest guy.
Just a massive person.
Just a massive human being, but just seems like a super good, fun guy.
You know what always interests me about these guys are not only they're just obviously they lift a ton of weights, but how much food they have to eat. It is. I saw this video of a competitor a couple years ago going to the grocery store, and it was hilarious. He's got 10 chickens.
Yeah.
3 dozen eggs probably for 2 days.
Yeah, for a couple days for sure.
My goodness.
I know, it's great. So this is what's so awesome to it's so perfectly built for YouTube, honestly, because Strongest Man competitions have been going on for 30, 40 years, whatever, since the 70s, really.
Yep.
But it's so built for YouTube because these guys there's training videos, right, where they're in the gym doing gym stuff, which there's tons of that on YouTube already and everybody loves it. There's just ridiculously inhuman feats of strength.
Yes.
Which is awesome to watch no matter what.
It's a Festivus for the rest of us.
Absolutely. And there's food videos. And that's it. Because these guys are lifting, hundreds and hundreds of pounds, in some cases over 1,000 pounds, like they are consuming 10,000 plus calories a day.
It's nuts.
You know, so I've watched, you know, dozens of videos now of like Brian or Eddie Hall or any of these guys doing like, you know, I swapped my diet with my wife for the day or like, you know, and I remember I watched one with Eddie Hall who did like a diet swap with his wife, who is like a hairdresser and not like, I mean, she's fit, but she's not like a bodybuilder or anything. And the first comment on there was something to the effect of like, when the video started, I was like, oh my God, how's Eddie going to survive? And then by the time the video ended, I was like, oh God, she's going to die. But it's true. Like she's eating, you know, 9,000, 10,000 calories or whatever. And Eddie Hall's eating her like quasi-vegetarian diet of like nothing, you know? So you think he's going to starve, but honestly, that's not the problem here, right? The problem is you cannot force yourself to eat.
That's a lot of calories. Yeah,
and so some of the Brian Shaw cheat day stuff, he's done some like cheat day is like 25,000 calories, which just seems gross at some point.
Yeah.
You're just like, I don't.
Why?
Please don't.
Yeah.
I can't.
The amount of weight these guys can move. So a little background on me, I played college football and I did deadlifts.
Yeah.
It's in the mid 400s. Like
pounds.
Yes, pounds.
Not kilograms.
Not kilograms. And just imagining doubling that.
Yeah.
At 52, 51.
I know. It's crazy.
Mind blowing.
Yeah. Nick Best still holds a world record in, I think it's shield carry. I think that's the official title of the event, but it is basically pick up a crazy heavy object and just walk with it as far as you can. And I don't know what his record is, but like I've seen him in World's Strongest Man competitions and he's beaten, you know, I mean, he beats everybody in that particular event. He's I don't think, like I said, he doesn't do as well overall, but like everybody has
an event
that is their event. And this is that event. And I just think like, we're talking about somebody lifting, let's say 300 pounds, holding that, and then moving with it, you know, 50 or 60 yards, right?
Yeah.
Or meters, because it's international.
It's worldwide.
Worldwide. It's nuts, you know? Like the Strongest Man in History show was super fun for me because, first of all, it was an introduction to all this stuff. Like I really didn't know much about it. And since then I've gone back and watched like all of the actual competitions for the last several years. So going back to like 2014, 2015. And they're amazing to watch just because it's just bizarre. Like it's just something that like I cannot even fathom. Like I played soccer in high school. You know, I played, you know, soccer basically from the time I was 5 to like varsity high school soccer. I watch professional soccer and I go, these guys are much better at soccer than I ever was, you know, by leaps and bounds. But I can understand what they're doing.
Yes.
Like I can fathom the process. I don't want to do it. It seems, you know, like a lot of work and with skills that I don't have and all of that. But like, I watch Brian Shaw do stuff and I'm like, there's no possible world in which I could have ever even come close. Like I couldn't even as an amateur attempt anything near what they're doing. You know, the Strongest Man in History, the connection to history, because, you know, his History Channel. So connection to history is tenuous at best.
Yes.
To actually say
humans have picked up heavy things throughout their existence.
That's kind of exactly what they did. But the premise of the show, to the extent that it's connected to history at all, was that they went to locations around the world where epic strongman feats were said to have occurred at one point in time or another. So they would tell a little story about whoever the strongman was that they were, you know, centering their episode around, and then go replicate whatever it was that their legendary feat was supposed to be.
It sounds like History Channel.
Right. So look, I mean, it was at least more realistic than some. But, you know, it's not Ancient Aliens, at least. But
that was on after.
Yeah. But at the same time, like a lot of the strongman myths were clearly nonsense.
Yes.
You know, like one of them was a Civil War myth, or a Revolutionary War myth. Sorry, not a Civil War myth. Revolutionary War story about a guy who, like, in the Continental Army, like losing a battle, a guy like picked up a cannon and hauled off with it because they didn't want to lose the cannon to the British. You know, and the legend was that like it was a 1,400-pound cannon or something. And these guys, who are probably the strongest, they're among the strongest human beings who have ever lived on planet Earth. Because let's be honest, people are bigger, nutrition is better, training is better.
Could you find 10,000 calories in a day?
No, right? No, you could not have the caloric intake to become this big. I mean, Brian Shaw is 6'8", 420, let's say 430 pounds, you know, of muscle. Not, you know, relatively low body fat as far as it goes. Like, I mean, these are big guys.
Yes.
You know, yeah, you couldn't be. I mean, we know what the trends are, right? Like human calorie consumption is dramatically higher today than it.
Thanks, capitalism.
Yeah, thanks capitalism for that. No, I mean, this is another thing. I mean, we should definitely talk about that because the abundance aspect of it, like what they're doing is literally not possible in a world where, you know, we're talking about their grocery bills and just their grocery trips and stuff. I mean, you're talking about, you know, dozens of eggs a week, dozens of steaks a week, you know, like, I don't know, hundreds of pounds of rice at some point. You know, I mean, you're talking about immense caloric intake on a daily basis that would absolutely not be possible any time before now.
Yep.
Pretty much. I mean, it's miraculous and it's totally underappreciated, but it also has made stuff like this possible, which is entertaining for me, but it's also like just this incredible like aspect of human development, you know, social development. It's nuts. But the cannon thing, like these are the strongest guys on the planet, and they heard 1,400 pounds. They're like, not even a chance. And so what they did was they decided that, first of all, it's a legend. It's been exaggerated tremendously over the years. But also then they tried to replicate it to some extent. And they kind of capped out around like picking up the actual cannon, I don't know what you call it, barrel, whatever, the actual cannon part, not, you know, the wheels and all the other junk. But like, I think they capped it out around 300 pounds. But again, this is dead weight, awkward weight, stuff that's weirdly shaped, and picking it up and moving with it a little bit, you know. I don't know. I mean, that was about the max because like picking up that much was, you know, and then doing something with it is really hard. My guess is that the legend started because the guy maybe either picked up a much smaller cannon or he had it on wheels and he dragged it by himself.
Which would be impressive.
Which would still be crazy impressive, but yeah. It's very different.
Would make sense.
One of the coolest things, though, and again, just it's what introduced me to the scale of this stuff, was that there was another story about a British strongman who went to London, and there's a British strongman who was also a bar owner, and a pub owner in London, and as just part of his sort of advertising for his pub, he would go outside the front of the pub and he would do crazy strongman stuff. And so he built this big apparatus that was essentially like some big sort of yoke lift where he would put beer barrels on the bottom and then he would climb up the little thing and he'd be on a big platform and then he would lift up, you know, this yoke with, 4 beer barrels or whatever. And the legend, I don't remember what the legend said. You know, it was like a handful of beer barrels. It's impressive, right? Yeah. Guy lifted 4 beer barrels off the ground, you know, with nothing but his body. Great. But these guys kind of turned it into a competition because
that's what they do.
That's what they do. And they just started. They did the initial thing that the legend did, and it was easy. And then they started adding weight. And they start adding beer barrels, and they start adding more, and they get up to 1,000 pounds, and then 1,500 pounds, and they get up to like 1,900 pounds. And they're at a point where there's, you know, like 12 beer barrels all lashed to this thing. and it starts to like, and then a couple of the guys like Nick Best, again, 52 years old or whatever, he dropped out at one point, but again, he was already at like 1900 pounds, somewhere there.
What a failure.
What a failure, right? I think Eddie dropped out at one point because he had an injury or something. He didn't want to go any further. But Brian Hall went over 2,000 pounds. Over a ton.
A ton of beer.
Of beer. No, they ended up having to stop putting beer barrels on it and just put plates.
Yeah.
Just weights on it. Because they ran out of
beer.
Beer. Yeah. I watched this and I was like, this is just the most impressive thing I've ever seen. But I don't think I would have connected with it that much except for watching. So the other piece of it for me, and the thing that I really, really love about it is the actual sort of sportsmanship and camaraderie between the guys. And this is carried through all of my watching of all of the events and stuff. Like like I said, Brian Hall is just a sweet guy, and he's just super nice. And like when he's lost competitions, he will go over to the guys like right away, go over and give him a big hug and like a fist bump and be like, awesome lift, bro. You know, like great job. Like that's impressive. You know, he just lost. He lost an important, world championship event or whatever. And his reaction is, hey man, good job.
Yeah.
Great. And you see this carry through all of their interactions in the show. And I was just kind of blown away by like the fact that they're all, there's a lot of ball busting and just like gym talk and kind of like bros being kind of bro-y. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's all really like supportive. And it's really like these dudes know that what they're doing, first of all, none of them have anything to prove to anybody. I mean, they can do things no other human beings on the planet can do. So it's not that they're like fighting for dominance here in the general sense. Like they can all do crazy stuff, but they also know how dangerous it is. So like when somebody wants to back out of something, or somebody's like, no, I don't, I got a tear in my bicep or whatever, I'm not going to even touch that. They don't like. There's no peer pressure. There's no like, oh, you wuss. No, like, no problem, man. Like, good job.
Yeah.
Right? It's just nice to see. And especially, again, in a world where, like, we're kind of inundated with just people fighting and people being, like, kind of horrible to each other all the time. It's just really, really nice to see, like, a bunch of guys who are crazy impressive and crazy competitive being really, really sporting.
Yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah.
Like I said, first sports I think I've had in a really long time when I've been like,
And they have balls.
I can watch that.
They have stones.
They do. The Atlas Stones thing is like,
so I guess it's
always sort of the end of all of their events, and it's
probably the most iconic.
It is the most iconic. Although there are a handful of events that are really, I don't know, truck pulls probably more
that's
iconic.
Up there too.
Truck pulls are great.
Yeah.
Or I said Eddie Hall in 2017, they did a Boeing C-135 pull. Because why not do an airplane pull?
It's the Christopher Nolan of
I know.
strongman.
I know. Yeah. I mean, these kinds of things, you just go, what? Like, how does a human...
Just can't even comprehend.
How does a human being do this? Eddie Hall had... There's some debate around this actually now. But in 2017, before the World's Strongest Man competition, Eddie Hall had become the first human being in the world to deadlift over 500 kilograms. So half a ton, essentially.
My gosh.
Yeah. And man, like he did it in front of thousands of people in England. And bled from his nose, bled from like the sides of his eyes, and probably from his ears doing this. It's nuts. I mean, like the whole idea of it was insane. He did it, and he did it, man. Like, It wasn't just like a little deadlift
off the ground,
and then letting it go, all the way up, shoulders all the way back, held it for a good long while, looked out the crowd, set it down, did it for real, you know? That record may have been broken this year by Hafthor Bjornsson, who's the Mountain, Game of Thrones. Maybe. I say maybe because I feel a little weird about it. COVID screwed up the World's Strongest Man competition this year. They were going to do it in May. Obviously, everything got wrecked. So they're going to do it in November, but they haven't done any actual like competitions until more recently. Thor broke the record on video, supposedly, but in his own gym without any kind of impartial judge.
Yeah. So there could be some wiggle room.
I don't know if it counts. You know what I mean? Like I'm not saying whatever he did was still crazy impressive, but you know.
You want to be at a neutral site.
You want a judge present. You want it to be like a kind of event thing. Yeah, maybe he'll do it again. I'm not really sure, but I mean honestly, like what Eddie talks about as far as like the just the physical toll.
I bet.
I can't imagine doing it again. You know.
Yeah.
It's like a one-time deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, I'm digging it, man. Like
That's awesome.
I don't know how far back I'm gonna go because like. You get to TV production. TV production goes downhill pretty quick once you get into like the 2000s and below. But,
makes sense.
I'll keep up with it now. Keep watching it.
Nice.
But here we are.
Wow, this is exciting.
Sports. A weird sport, but a sport nonetheless.
I mean, it's kind of like track and field. It's one of the original ones.
Yeah. Well, that's actually been funny to me too. Eddie retired, and all Eddie's doing on YouTube now. Well, Eddie's doing a lot of stuff, but. The first thing he did after he retired is he did a day of games with a heavyweight boxer who I don't remember. But by day of games, I mean, they played Jenga and Connect Four.
Oh, those guys. Nice.
And they did it in a gym, and it was like ultra epic sort of, like a face off between a heavyweight boxer and the world's strongest man and all of this stuff. And then they're like, Jenga. So he did that. He's been doing stuff. And this is also just crazy to me too. Like he'll do stuff where it's like, world's strongest man tries Olympic javelin throwing or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's not that surprising, but there are some things that he's just not suited for.
Right.
Because if you're
that big, it's hard to.
It's tough. Like he did one where he was going with another fitness influencer on like a triathlon thing. And I mean, Eddie doing however many 5-mile run or whatever it is.
That's a lot of weight.
Like he can do it, but whew, boy, tough.
Yeah.
But he's done some of these things like javelin throwing where if he can get the skill down, he can do
it's a lot of muscle.
Very well.
Javelin throwing is not easy either. They make it look easy in the Olympics.
No.
But it's a lot of technique.
No, and javelin throwing was an interesting one anyway because it's actually not a muscle thing. It's a speed thing, right? It's a launch speed because the javelin itself weighs, a couple pounds, right?
Yeah.
Not a big deal for Eddie, nothing. Literally nothing, I don't know, but it's interesting. And like I said, I just feel like it's completely made for YouTube. It's like it's such a perfect YouTube moment of just like, well, that's a weird thing that I've never heard of anybody doing before. Yeah, sure. I'll check that out. It's all super clickable.
You can see the thumbnail. He lifted what?
I know. Well, that's what, because like Eddie's got a channel and Brian Shaw's got a channel and Robert Oberst has a channel. All of these guys have good YouTube channels. And then anytime they're in the same place, it's like,
the Avengers?
They'll just get together. Well, yeah, but like they'll just get together and do like training, because they're going to do it anyway. And so then the YouTube thumbnail is, two guys bench press 600 pounds or whatever. And you go, well,
okay,
would watch.
Click. Or
my favorite one so far, not my favorite. I have a lot of favorites at this point. I don't want to say this is officially my favorite, but one of my favorite things I have seen so far was Brian and Robert Oberst went into a Planet Fitness with the express intention of maxing out the deadlift machine on Planet Fitness to see if they could just deadlift just the max weight that anyone has ever deadlifted in a Planet Fitness ever. And they got up to about 560 pounds, and that was the end. There was no more getting weights on this machine. And then when they looked at it, it was actually past the machine's rating. So they were like, "Ooh, maybe we should
stop."
Maybe we should stop.
Doesn't Planet Fitness have a no hunks allowed?
They do. So there was another one that Brian and somebody else did. I forget who else went in with him on this. They got kicked out of a bunch of Planet Fitnesses because they were trying to just max. The goal was to max out the machines on every machine. So the goal was to go hit every single thing. But there's a lunk alarm thing, which I didn't realize was like a literal thing. I thought it was just like sort of a metaphor. But there's a literal alarm.
People can.
Yeah. So, and I think it's actually a audio sensor, but it could be manual. I'm not sure, but it's like you can be alerted to the fact that there's like guys throwing it up in Planet Fitness, and then there's a big light and like an alarm that actually goes off that is like, get out of here. So I got kicked out of a bunch of Planet Fitnesses. Although I also learned that Planet Fitness on like one Monday a month or whatever gives out free pizza to everybody.
Because that makes sense.
You know, I think the funny thing was that I think it's the idea of it was that the Planet Fitness is trying to make it like a friendly environment. And hey, it's okay if you have a slice of pizza every so often. But for these guys, they go on those days, and then it's just strongman who eat 10,000 calories a day just eating a pizza.
So where's the other 3 pizzas that we need?
Well, that's what happened because when Brian and Robert went to max out the deadlift or the press, halfway through the video, like Robert Oberst just appears with a pizza. And he's just like, "Oh, this is mine. Like, God, this is my pizza.
Nobody's gonna stop him.
You're not allowed to have one." Came a whole thing.
Planet Fitness person's like, yes,
what are you gonna do?
Yes, you can have this pizza. Yeah.
It was fun, man. Like this stuff has been really entertaining to me, and I'm glad. I'm excited about it. We've covered this for a long time already, and actually we had stuff to talk about on this episode. But I'm glad that I'm kind of doing entertaining stuff. It's been a busy time. I've been inundated with political ads, and it's getting a little hard to take. So, we thought that today, on today's episode, we would talk about some Mel Brooks horror comedies.
Yes.
Not much horror. Mostly comedy, not much horror. But for today's episode, we want to talk about Young Frankenstein.
Yes.
Which I hadn't seen in a long time. It's 1974. Written by Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks. Directed by Mel Brooks. Starring Gene Wilder, Peter Boyle. I love Gene Wilder so much.
He is fantastic. And he just channels crazy very well.
Perfectly.
And
quiet crazy, too. Not even like... He's got range, man.
He does. Him playing Frederick Frankenstein. Frankenstein. You can always tell there's a little something off right behind the eyes.
Yeah.
And he leans into it as the movie goes along.
No, it's great. I mean, so his introduction for those who haven't seen this movie, I think Paul and I agree about this. Like, I don't think it's as good as Blazing Saddles or The Producers. I don't personally like it as much as I even like Robin Hood Men in Tights, but it's notoriously one of Mel Brooks' best films probably, and it's the unlike so for the Patreon bonus today we're going to talk about Dracula Dead and Loving It, which is really a direct spoof on Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is more of a take on Frankenstein because it is Frederick Frankenstein is the grandson of Victor Frankenstein. So it's not quite the same story, but it's also kind of the same story.
It is, but it isn't, right?
Yeah, he does it. He makes a monster, and
doesn't want anything to do with his his lineage.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is like the introduction. His introduction is like as a college professor, and they're like, the first question is like, well, aren't you related to Victor Frankenstein? Who like, he's like, well, my grandpa doesn't have anything to do with this. Like, he just doesn't want to have anything to do with it at all, and gets very upset about it. And it's and yet he's doing the same thing.
Yep.
Like he's doing exactly the same stuff.
He's a little bit crazy.
A little crazy. I don't know, man. Like you hadn't seen this in a while.
It's probably been 12 to 15 years for me. So I was at a very different life at that point. And while there was still a lot of funny parts, I didn't enjoy it as much as I had previously. I don't particularly know why, because I still very much enjoy Blazing Saddles. Yeah. Still very much enjoy Producer.
I'm trying to think. I mean, is there anything? Because for me, I think this is still one of the best written comedies I've seen in a long time. It's just got a lot of really subtle, brilliant moments. It's got a lot of really big, broad, super funny moments too. I mean, just again, putting on the Ritz.
Putting on the Ritz is always funny.
With Frankenstein, with the monster actually doing the, putting on,
and the shoes they have him wear.
The shoes. And every aspect of that scene is just hysterical. I mean, there's a lot of really, really smart, sharp writing in it. And I don't know. Something that always stands out to me is just him meeting Igor, who's, again, like the grandson of the original Igor. And he says, he meets him at the train station. He's like, oh, are you Frederick Frankenstein? He's like, well, it's Frankenstein. He's like, oh, Frankenstein? What is it, Froderick Frankenstein? He's like, no, it's just Frederick Frankenstein. Well, okay. He's like, well, so you must be Igor. And he's like, well, it's Igor.
It's Igor.
But, stuff like that is so, like, it's just so, like, weird and sharp, but like also goofy, and it's that kind of stuff that I just kind of adore about Mel Brooks in general.
Yes.
And Gene Wilder's, again, for me, is sort of king of delivery on, I mean, there's nobody with better comic timing than Gene Wilder. And it's just, like you said, that like crazy behind the,
always waiting for him to snap throughout the entire movie.
Right.
And he just slowly becomes Frankenstein, I
know, Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. He slowly becomes Frankenstein, not Frankenstein.
Yeah. I don't know, man. What were some of the things that stood out for you this viewing that maybe like you didn't remember? Or
to be honest, one of the few jokes I remember from the first long time ago was the enlargement parts. That joke.
Yeah, it's probably inappropriate for the show a little bit, but
it's a big part.
No, so we'll leave it mostly to the imagination. But let's just say the point was, he realized there's a scientific reason for this. He had to find a very large human being to reanimate, just because all of the connections and everything would somehow work better.
Yeah, and expand.
I don't know. But it would work better if he had found a very large human being. And so, there's a discussion of other large
everything
parts.
Expands.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to... maybe we'll talk about Dracula Dead and Loving It. Maybe I watched that first, and then I watched Young Frankenstein. And
we did too, though.
And I did not enjoy. This is the first time I watched. So.
Oh yeah, right.
So I might have been in the wrong
headspace.
But this one, I guess, also has not been one of my favorite. Similar to you.
I'm curious about it. So one of the things. So I'm friends with Paul Gay, who's the writer for Liar Liar. and Little Rascals and a bunch of other movies that are, he's a really good comedy writer. And he and I bond a lot over Mel Brooks in general, and just I love Mel Brooks, and so does he. And he has told me, and I don't know, I'm probably getting this wrong because I think Blazing Saddles probably outrank Young Frankenstein, but he's often told me that Young Frankenstein is just one of his all-time favorite comedy scripts. I agree, but I also was in kind of a weird headspace, like pretty busy when I was watching it, so it was a little tricky for me to like give it my complete attention. And unlike Blazing Saddles, it doesn't quite suck me in as much.
No.
Blazing Saddles, for me, if it's on, I mean, I'm never in a situation where something is randomly on anymore, but like if it was,
you get sucked in.
I'd get sucked in. And if I tried to do something else while I was watching Blazing Saddles,
just impossible.
It'd be nearly impossible. I would just immediately get, or like half my brain would just be dedicated to Blazing Saddles the whole time, where I would just literally, maybe I'd be like writing an email and then I'd be like,
bean scene comes on.
Yeah, whatever, right? Like, oh, Mongo's going to punch that horse. Like, oh.
Mongo's just pawn game of life.
Yeah, right. So stuff like that, I just couldn't help but get distracted by. Young Frankenstein, not quite so much. Like, it's good, and it's really, really smartly written. And Gene Wilder's is phenomenal. I mean, everybody, honestly, is phenomenal.
Gene Hackman's
in this movie, which I forgot about entirely.
Yeah.
And it's a great scene. It's a blind man.
It's one of my least favorite scenes.
Trying to be nice about the Frankenstein's monster and just like pouring hot soup on him, basically. No, it's dumb, but it's, But again, so Young Frankenstein like does have all of the Frankenstein beats, right?
Yes.
It has. It's coming from that, So we got a mad scientist. We've got raising a man from the dead. You got pitchfork wielding, sort of
with the
townsfolk or
with the
whatever.
fake arm sheriff who cheats at darts.
Yeah. You've got Frankenstein's monster, meeting a little girl, which also is great. That actually is one of my favorite scenes in the film is he meets the girl, and you have to be convinced that in the horror fashion he's gonna accidentally murder this girl in some way, but instead he just plays on a playground with her and then launches her into her bedroom. Just like ridiculous, but. Stuff like that. So all the beats are there, but I don't know. There's something about Mel Brooks's like more original movies. Again, Blazing Saddles or The Producers, or I mean, I guess Robin Hood Men in Tights is similar in that it is just purely a spoof. Mm-hmm. And Spaceballs is purely a spoof. But even Spaceballs is just so unique and different, and it's a take on Star Wars that is just so off the wall, Yeah. And this isn't quite as extreme as that.
No, it's very. If it wasn't for the sophomoric jokes, which are funny, you could easily make this into a horror movie.
Yeah, you could.
That's just.
But the jokes are important.
Yeah, for Mel Brooks, yes.
Yeah.
I think the problem I also have is I'm judging this based off his best.
Yeah, well, it's hard.
And because, Spaceballs, Blazing Saddles, The Producers.
Yeah, History of the World.
All-time classics.
Yeah.
Best comedies. And that just doesn't quite hit that level. Doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah, I agree, though. I do. And it's, that's the tough part. We were talking a few weeks ago we've talked about Nolan so many times, but like, you get to a point with certain directors and you just go like, their worst movie,
still really good,
still pretty good.
Yeah. And
Mel Brooks is like, and Young Frankenstein is not Mel Brooks' worst movie either, I wouldn't say, but
we'll get to that later.
But it's also a preview. I will say, because I was paying a little bit more attention to it while I was watching it, I actually laughed more at Dracula than loving it. But you didn't like it at all.
I don't believe you.
I did. I had more, but mostly because it was like Young Frankenstein is just sort of out of the corner of my eye a little bit.
Gotcha,
where I was like,
gotcha.
oh, Oh yeah, that scene that I'm like laughing at it. But no, it's not. But even still, it's super well written and funny and just masterfully directed. And the timing again, Gene Wilder. I just can't say enough about Gene Wilder in general because Gene Wilder is so specific a performer. Like he's so sweet on one hand and can have these just huge blow ups and he's so visibly neurotic the entire time. And yet it's different because like when I think of like really neurotic actors, I think of somebody like, Woody Allen or like, Jesse Eisenberg now, somebody like that. But they always make me uncomfortable.
Yes.
Gene Wilder never makes me uncomfortable. I just want to laugh at him and feel a little bad for him.
Right.
And then I'm waiting for him to just like lose it, And he does.
Yeah.
He invariably does. But
there's always a strand of sanity there.
Yeah. He's often the straight man in a lot of these things. I mean, I think about, the producers and, Leo Bloom he is not the comic character, even though he's the funniest one, but it's Max Bialystock that is like the crazy out there, everything. But Leo Bloom is the one you root for, and he's also the one who you are waiting to, as he does, just completely go nuts. Because he's the one who's being put upon the entire time. So when he actually loses it, it's just great, And you can say the same thing. A little bit less so in Blazing Saddles because he's not really a character who's gonna lose it.
Right.
But like in Silver Streak, definitely, those kinds of things. But it's just, there's nothing better than watching Gene Wilder like lose his mind.
It's fantastic.
Just even Willy Wonka,
yes.
for example. Just watching Gene Wilder scream at people is just the funniest thing. I don't know. Would you recommend watching Young Frankenstein?
Oh, certainly. I feel like I'm coming across very harsh on Young Frankenstein. And, I think, again, it has a lot to do with I know who made it.
Yeah.
So I hold it to a higher standard than I probably should.
Well, also, didn't you tell me that you were going to watch Hubie Halloween?
I didn't say I have high standards for myself. But for Mel Brooks.
Just saying.
So, yes. Hubie Halloween, obviously. It's just sometimes you just need the old mid-90s warm blanket. And this time period, I want that mid-90s warm blanket right now.
Fair
Everything's
enough.
fine. 9/11 hasn't happened yet. Just cuddle me in.
Yeah, Sandler.
Yeah.
Oh man, no, I agree though. Like I think as I said at the beginning of the show too, it's just like the same reason that I'm getting into the strongman stuff is just I don't want to see another political ad. I don't want another rant from some obnoxious politician or some blue check mark or whatever. I just don't. I don't want any of it.
It's getting old.
It's getting real old. I also don't need anybody to tell me to vote. I've been told.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Have I made a plan?
Are you ready? Are you prepared?
Have I assembled my squad to go vote? Yes, I have a plan.
Just vote.
Just vote. Doesn't matter who you vote for.
We don't care who you vote for.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Not at all. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Fine. I don't need another lecture about voting. I don't need another, another campaign ad. I don't need another debate.
Just need Hubie Halloween.
I'll take Mel Brooks over Adam Sandler, but it's just nice to have a fun evening.
So this is kind of a tangent, but I'm not a huge fan of Netflix, but one thing that I do appreciate that they're reviving the rom-com.
They are, actually. I hadn't really thought about that a ton, but you're right.
And I'm so thankful because our entertainment, I feel like, has gone through this really depressing.
Yeah.
Everyone's an anti-hero.
Yeah.
Everything is a dystopia. Mm-hmm. When in reality, we live in the best time period to ever live.
I know. It's still, if you shut down Twitter and you just go meet people and walk around outside, you're going to have a pretty good time.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good world out there.
It's a fantastic world.
It's weird that like we get trapped, and it's not weird now, especially this year. It's no wonder that we're inundated with all this stuff this year, especially because like all people have done is stay inside and look at Twitter.
Yeah.
You know, but that's not healthy.
It's not.
You know, it's not, and not because of any of the stupid reasons that we talked about with social dilemma and all that junk. It's not healthy because like it's not a realistic portrayal of the world. All you're getting is, it's much like watching the nightly news and watching cable news, 24-hour news, whatever. It's you're getting the worst things that happened today, or you're getting somebody's most outrageous take on whatever happened today, especially Twitter,
Have to have the hottest take or you're not going to get
right.
any clicks.
Yeah, you're not going to get any clicks. You're not going to get any retweets. But, that hot take is like, it's not reality.
No.
So shut it down every so often.
Yeah.
Get out there and watch a Mel Brooks movie.
Watch a Mel Brooks movie. Watch a rom-com.
Yeah.
Just have fun.
Just have fun.
Enjoy life.
Yeah. With that, I think that'll conclude this part of the episode on Young Frankenstein. But for patrons, and if you're not a patron, please consider supporting the show at patreon.com/outoframeshow. But for patrons, we're going to continue on, do a bonus episode on another Mel Brooks movie called Dracula Dead and Loving It, starring Leslie Nielsen. If you want to watch that, please join us on Patreon. And for everybody else, we still love that you're listening to the show, that you're watching it on YouTube, and that you're checking out of Frame and all of our social media. Trying to make it not filled with hot takes and just like, angry messages.
Yeah, we want to
trying to have a good
conversation. Want to know where you guys are at. And one thing that I've been tossing around my head is when Mandalorian comes back. And this is a question I have for our audience. Would you want something where we get on Instagram Live or something like that and we do an episode recap?
I'd be interested. I'd have fun with that for sure. I loved the first season of Mandalorian. I think we both did. Mm-hmm. I'd be thrilled to get on and do that.
So if that's something you're interested in, let us know.
Yeah, cool. Anyway, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.